And here is my black wolf. This will be a great addition to the story. Hey guys, Saul here. Great to see you. It has been a very interesting day. It is rife with destruction everywhere. By the time this video is airing, it's going to be a few weeks after the events of today, but we're right in the middle of all these crazy fires. I am not right in the middle of it. I'm in California, but I happen to be well away from the area. I'm nowhere near the Palisades fire, thank goodness, and any of those other regions. But I've just been following all the devastation, and it is sobering, it is humbling. I just really wanted to create something and don't have too much time today to do it. So I figured that is a great recipe to get back into the art journal. I featured a page. I took you through a tour of everything so far. I'm going to make the latest page today. I just finished my latest ghost story. It's kind of a Little Red Riding Hood themed story that I alluded to in the art journal tour. That one will be posting, I don't know, either today or tomorrow. And I'm thinking it needs one more page in it. So I am going to be getting one of those happening here. And I was thinking we could enjoy our time together here. I'd love to have you along. Maybe you'd like to watch it. Maybe you'd like to just hang out. This one will be a little different. I want to share the drawing process with you. I intend to do quite a few of those, and I have before. But yeah, so let's take a little trip. Welcome aboard. All right. So now we get to have some fun here. I'm going to be making this beautiful wolf, or I will attempt to make him beautiful and do him justice. I think that I'm starting from an initial image of reference. I will not be surprised if he starts whispering for me to take him in another direction. We'll see. And like I said, I don't have that much time, so I'm going to be doing my best not to overthink this, and which is always fun. I'm not always in this position. I tend to make sure that I budget extra time for creating something, because I don't always like that feeling of like, oh, I got to get this done. And I do tend to work best when I can germinate. That said, a big thing that has changed my life in terms of my output has been making deadlines. And some of those are, on the time-sensitive side. So just a little bit about what I'm doing right now is I am doing a thing that I like to term in my videos as scouting. So I'm kind of dancing around the whole real estate of the page, because I want to get a sense of how much space this wolf is going to take. And I don't want to put in a bunch of time in the beginning only to find that this is going much lower here, or his nose brings the rest of his snout too low, and where does that put the whole piece? And this is a bit of storytelling in its own way, but you do want to be mindful of what gets the most attention. Of course, well, I shouldn't say of course, but in my opinion, should ultimately go to the eyes. And I want to make sure that everything is more or less balanced to set that up, because, and this is one of the fun things about being a writer and an artist, because, like I said, I am telling a story here, but I can also pull from the story that I've written, the story that has inspired this extra image. And so I have written a few little things about the wolf, but of course, like, his eyes are a big deal. And whenever you're writing or whenever you're drawing reference is like a never-ending series of relationships. It is a never-ending series of clues that are solved by relationships. That's the way I see it. A lot of times when you're just, drawing or painting your own thing, you're kind of flying blind. You are seeing how things maybe should look, and that can take a lot of mind work, a lot of mental calculating and figuring things out and asking yourself, being real with yourself if this is looking right, and it's very challenging when you don't have many references to work with. So the more references you can do, the further along you'll be as an artist, and that just should be a rule that you do throughout your life. And I would say when I first got my Ghost in the Gaslight project running, it was kind of all from imagination. And as the years went by, I really was seeing the fun and the necessity for more reference, bringing that in, and then I just started doing still lives and then just doing standalone animal studies. You really get the joy of art by constantly figuring out that mystery. It's a beautiful. Okay, so I think I've got this sketching, the first part of my sketching, more or less how I want it. And now what I want to do is, not a lot of people do this, but for me, I think what's been really fun is adding an inking element to this sketching. And part of the reason that I started doing that is because I was inking all the time. I think inking is arguably where I tend to feel the most comfortable. However, as things were progressing and I really wanted to get back to my roots as a multidisciplinary artist and challenge myself further there, of course I would ink less. And then I started to certainly get into the pencil sketch that would go beneath the painting. I started seeing that I was relying too much on the pencil sketching and not letting things take their course when I paint. And I felt like this might help make me a strong drawer, but I felt like I needed to let loose and improvise with painting more. So I made it a point to make sure that my sketches in pencil were very minimalistic so that I was taking more leaps of faith in the painting. So I don't know if you can see that is kind of a really great set of ways that you can just keep challenging yourself. And that's one of the things why I advocate for being a multidisciplinary artist. I started to see though that as I was painting a lot, and another thing is when you're multidisciplinary, one medium can kind of inform another medium. And it may not even be literally when you're doing both mediums. It may be, and this is kind of awesome, it may just be in the mindset. So maybe you've been painting a lot. Painting tends to be much more about color and not about lines per se. Well, then you go back to the fountain pen and you're feeling a little fast and loose there. Start maybe experimenting with the lighting that you do, or new ways, new techniques to light a character or a object in space using lines that maybe you hadn't done because you just got to take a break from it and do something totally different. And again, it just kind of can influence the mind. And I've experienced that throughout my life because I've always not been happy just doing one thing, and I've always just gotten a payoff by revisiting another thing. So then I do a lot of drawing, and then I go back to the painting side of things, and then I find that I'm more confident in planning things out. I'm more confident in the structure. I'm not just going, I'll just put this paint here, or I start to get into the sketching first, or the drawing, or something. It just kind of becomes stronger there. But what I was noticing was, as I was doing lots of painting, my sketching was feeling a little more foreign. And then also when I would go back to ink, I was getting way too meticulous at it, and I was getting paranoid and worried about making a mistake. So I was getting way too like kind of anal retentive and obsessing over the final image in mind from the time that I would start the drawing. And I was just creating so much pressure, and I really hated that. And then I just had this great idea of like, hey, what if when I paint, after I do the pencil sketch, I go in and really just have some fun with the ink and make an ink sketch. And this will be great because no one's really going to see it, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be covering it with paint. And I think that is one of the better ideas that I've had. Because there's just this point where I just start experimenting. I feel like kind of fast and loose with what I am choosing in the ways of a technique, if it's an outline or shading, especially when I bring in that kind of scouting technique. I just start going all over the place. It helps me kind of preview it too, because I'm working with light and dark, and that is bringing you back to a sense of play. And here I am with the dipping fountain pen. I mean, it can be kind of tricky to work with, but I am just totally playing, and I'm feeling almost no pressure with it. So I don't know if that dives with you, but so here as I am shading this guy, and it is also helping me just kind of get a sense of the proportions. If I had just done a minimalistic pencil sketch, and I'd be kind of guessing at the shadow values, and I'm writing a lot, I'm drawing a lot, but sometimes one demands a break from the other. So in other words, it has been a little while since I got to just cut loose with the ink and just really get into a pencil sketch that is going to be relying heavily on values of light and dark. So it's great to have this way of just experimenting and seeing where it takes me. Pretty soon I'll be kind of ready for the paint. And honestly, I could do it right now, but with this technique that I'm doing, I'm kind of working three mediums at once. I'm working with concept, like the initial composition with the pencil. Then I'm playing with my inking technique. Then I will be working with, I'm going to start with like a black ink wash. And then I'm actually going to go over it, I think, with gouache, which has become one of my favorite things to do. Follow an opaque, indestructible wash of colors that have dried with highlights of gouache. And that is so much fun. It takes almost no time at all to come together. And very gratifying whenever it does come together. I'm going to go ahead and do these eyes. Yeah, there we go. Now he's getting a little more in his head. And he's got a lot of fur up here. Yeah, now I'm kind of getting this strategy going here. And think that as this unfolds, he's going to keep kind of revealing himself to me. Now, if this was going to be an ink drawing, I might come at this differently. That's part of why I like to do it this way, because I don't need to really think about how it's going to be in the end. But it wouldn't necessarily have to be too different. I would just be a little more mindful of how I'm shading and any places that I want to leave later for highlights. But okay, I think we're pretty much ready to get this going. Another reason that I like using the ink pen is because once I do this wash, which is going to be black ink, I'm going to want it to kind of show up underneath. And I've done it where it's pencil, and it can be very challenging to see it. So this will really show through pretty well. But anyways, let's get this going. I'm going to do a time lapse now, and we'll move to that second phase so that I can kind of focus on the paint. But this was actually kind of fun. I don't know that I've really done a video where I was where I was talking to you while I'm working. So that's kind of historic, but we'll see if I keep doing it that way. I think that is another thing that is good for me. I like to try lots of different things. But anyways, let's add some paint. Okay, so now I'm going to, actually I want to make sure these eyes are dry here. One thing about India ink is that if it moves around, that's it. Though I'm not necessarily in danger of that, because this part is meant to be messy. But I am going to, well, that's odd. I guess my water wasn't properly clean, so looks like there was a little red in it. But I would normally maybe get worried about that, but I don't know how much red is going to be factoring here. Yeah, you see some of that ink was dry there. Now, this paper is not all white, so I'm not going to be obsessing over how much negative space I leave, because for the last highlights, I foresee that I'm probably going to go with some white paint to really make the highlights pop. If this was white paper, then the pure gold is how much highlights you make from negative space you've left in the paper, because that'll just be blinding. But this paper is going to be kind of my mid-tone. That's part of why I like to use this paper. But yeah, so this will be kind of fun. Now I think I'm gonna stop with this size brush, and I actually, you know what? I'm gonna keep using this brush, but the next brush I'm gonna go with the Sumi brush here. So okay, so this is all wet, and now what I want to do is get lots of dark black paint here. So now you can see what I mean by it's good to have your sketch made of black ink. You know? This will all dry, and then it won't be as dark as it is now, but it will be pretty dark. But luckily, the black ink is going to show through, and I will have some semblance of what I created under all that darkness. Look at this guy. Ooh, gives me chills. And a bit of this story is kind of staring into the eyes of your death. It's a cool story. I mean, obviously I'm biased. You can make your own assumption, but I'm excited to do this. So yeah, this is our wolf. I'm gonna dip a little more darkness here, because I really want this guy to be just kind of coming out of the night here. And because it's Ghost in the Gaslight, ideally what I like to work with is really study light. I like to carve shadows out of light. I like to carve light out of shadows. And I think that's always just a wonderful thing. Also with this is, as you kind of work this way, sometimes you'll be surprised how much of your work can be done for you by the time you're done with the washes, like this phase. I mean, I'm really, just going into the dark here, and with watercolor, or I consider this watercolor. I mean, I'm working with ink, but I'm using the watercolor method. You can get most of it done if you really are learning the ways of the wash, which I have not done that nearly as much as I would like to, like sat down and just learned it. But I have learned a ton of the techniques and tricks just from my own, I think, prolific crash tests. I've made it overcomplicated many times and then only to revisit with some other project and just found it goes very smoothly, and then just learning, oh, that's kind of the payoff of that other time, which is kind of neat. But now I'm just kind of playing with what I can do based on like the different patterns I see here and there. Drawing, painting in many ways is an act of faith. But the more you do it, I think the more it turns from faith to confidence. Or I guess confidence is faith in yourself, so maybe it's the same thing. I think one of the joys that a watercolor artist gets to find is how much it seems water can find the patterns of life. Like if you really keep working with watercolor, it's such a joy to go out into the world, go and do your day, observe a skyline, observe a mountain, observe a table, and see the patterns as though it were a watercolor. The most obvious example is clouds on a really overcast, rainy day or stormy day. It'll look like a watercolor in the sky. You get this sense that someone has just been creating something very beautiful and they're painting with watercolor. Our whole life is like a big watercolor painting. That's just a beautiful thing. I think this guy is just about done. I encourage you to try this technique like I'm doing with just black and white, or just two tones, just use one color. It'll just be more manageable. And I'm not going to use one color. This is going to be a few different kinds of colors that I'm already seeing, what you see, what you find. Anyway, this one is this guy's about ready. Okay. That was maybe quicker than I think the other two combined. So this is what you can do with paint. This is what's possible. And I've really just kind of gone and covered a lot of this guy with this one color, and it's really done all my work for me. Now it's going to be up to me, personal preference, how detailed I want this to be. And yeah, let's see what happens. I've got some ideas of what's going to happen, but let's go. So as you can see, this dries much lighter. And I want more black. Now I can do two things. I can either go in with gouache and just make this a lot blacker with gouache, but I really want to get the ink happening. I want this to really, I want to work with the ink part. I want to see what it takes to get this done as dark as possible before I go in with the colors and stuff. I want to, when I said I'm going to be working on several different disciplines on this, or mediums I should say, this is part of what I want to do with this. I want to really bend the possibilities of shadow to my will with this ink. And And then the gouache will be like gravy. That'll be like where I just get to go in, have fun. And so I've hardly dipped this brush in water this time because I don't want, I've got the undercoat, so I know this is going to have these like nice, you know, there are gradations if need be, all through it. It's kind of fun. I've done lots of wolves, but I don't think I've painted one that I can think of like up close like this, where I get to work on a wolf portrait. I haven't really done that before. And I specifically wanted to get like more of a black wolf. I mentioned it in a video prior, but I think when you work with black fur, it forces you to just kind of look for nuance. And that is great when you're working with light and shadow in black and white, and that is awesome when you're also working with color. You can get some kind of expressionistic ideas of the fur or black hair. But I always find it really magical when I do a wash and then when I bring out that hairdryer and you just almost instantly see like this whole nother thing come out of it. It's like this whole other painting. In this case, I wanted more darkness, and he kind of turned out to be, you know, kind of light and kind of a nice, almost like gray, golden type of wolf. But I want this guy to be bad news, you know, because he is. I do feel an affinity with these guys. I think also that, I mean, they have a lot of symbolism, and I think the wolf is always, it's a very kind of male symbol. The wolf is mysterious, and yet he kind of wears himself on his sleeve. Has that hungry wolf look, you know what he wants. Like more so than say like a cat, you know, like a cat always, you know, they're hungry, but there's always like this extra layer of calculation. There's something just, I don't know, right there on the surface with a wolf. They just kind of go for what they want, and they're expressive, and of course there's the howling, which usually is like this form of communication, you know. The pack animals are kind of building a perimeter sometimes, letting each other know where they are so they can find each other. And then it's also a way that they can, you know, menace the prey. So of course they have their storied hierarchies. They change their leaders constantly. You don't necessarily have one who is the leader and that's it. They'll put the weaker members of the pack in the middle. They'll also mate for life. It's I think, a very complex animal. I mean, animals are, if you look at any of them, they're complex, but they're also a strategy to them. It's part of how they can be such like apex predators. The ways that they communicate, the hierarchies and all of that. Nothing like a wolf. But because I was going with blacks, I don't know if this was necessarily the best wash idea. But sometimes that's how it goes. But still, I can't say I was setting out to have like a whole plan here. I was like, hey, I know I'm going to do these mediums and let's see what happens. And we are seeing what happens. But I like what I'm seeing. I think pretty soon you're about to see it too. I hope. All right. Let's get the hairdryer going. Okay, so a lot of this is listening to the painting and thinking ahead. I feel like I maybe have an idea of where my future is in terms of the gouache and what's going to happen when I add that. And what I believed as I was watching this dry and the painting was starting to come to life in a certain way, I saw how I was going to need an underlayer of black under the wonderful highlights that I intend to really go in and play with. But what's really going to help them is if I have black fur under it as much as possible. And I realize it's not going to be contingent on stuff like this on here. So, yeah, very important. I find this was part of the seat of my pants planning. So, anyway, here we go on to the next one. So I just want to give you a little, this will be kind of cool. So I'm going to move this, there's a light here, it's a desk light that's giving me the illumination to work, but I'm just going to tilt it. And now you get a sense of how black this thing really is. I mean, that's pretty cool considering, the simple steps that have been done thus far. Anyway, I'm going to move this back here. And when I said I was going to do the Sumi brush, I didn't realize that I was going to be going in and adding that extra layer, and I thought I was going to play more with the ink. But now that the ink part is done, I will not be using the Sumi brush. I'm actually going to be, with the gouache, I'm going to have these two different sizes here. And I think those will pretty much be the only ones I need, but we'll see. Okay, so now we come to the last stage. I'm going to be painting with the gouache paint over this black ink wash. Again, the ink will not rehydrate. It is there now. It's there to stay. Gouache does rehydrate, so gouache is not exactly the most ideal layering type of paint, but you can erase it. You can rehydrate it simply by introducing water. Also with this piece, I've gotten into the jump cuts, which I've done for a lot of my other YouTube videos, but I think that with this one, I've been focusing on less editing and just giving you more of the experience of doing it as best I can, the process, the hangout, the storytelling. And this part is pretty fun where I'm really playing with the values. So I made a lot of shadow with that ink wash, and now I'm going to bring in the light. I'm going to bring in highlights. This part's kind of interesting because our wolf here looks like a baboon. I haven't really made the contours of the ears yet, but they're coming. And then he's starting to come into his own. And I'm just getting the kind of the important contrasts in. The nose is a bright part. The eyes are a bright one. The various flecks of fur. So I am just continuing to scout, just like I did with the other ones. And it keeps you fast and loose. So I highly recommend scouting. Just kind of go everywhere. Now, one thing I would say, having said that, is I think that I started to do less scouting and getting more serious, which makes sense. Because this is kind of the serious stage where the highlights, which are the final touch, they are going to tell you in some ways more than what anyone else will on, any of the other mediums or tools. So there is always a little fun bit of work when you're doing black fur. There's so many ways it can go. And that nose is kind of establishing how bright the light can be here. But I do want the draw to be the eyes. As you can see, I've put some red in there. I've put some like raw umber. I've put in like baby blue and royal blue. I don't know if that's baby blue, but I'm just calling it that. And this snout is really starting to come together, as is this wolf. Pretty exciting how a story you write can lead you to making another piece that you didn't even plan to do. And I more or less saw something like this in my head, which is important. And I didn't realize that snout almost looks like a skull there. I don't know if anyone else saw that, but I'm thinking that maybe others will. This was a story that is really dwelling on the eyes of the wolf at some point. So the eyes were important. And having a little fun with the fingers too. And just getting like these little globs and droplets. And before you know it, I'm seeing this great wolf. Which makes me so happy considering how crazy the world is right now. But I do love that I'm creating this thing and this wolf is starting to step forward and help tell me his story. And yeah, now this is kind of full circle. It is really fun to begin this process where you get the luxury of painting it. Now that you have sketched it, now that you've done washes, now that you've planned it, now you get to go in and do all these little highlights. And I always feel like this part kind of steals the show. Yeah, it's once we start getting these highlights and I'm establishing the relationships of light and shadow. I've done it so much now. I've got the black and then I've got the light, the white. So any of these other colors that come in, as long as I've kind of got that main friendship happening there, this part of the white can be a light blue, and then the next part can be a dark blue. Or sometimes I'll just do dark blue by itself, or the dark blue and the red together. And it really helps to keep experimenting. And I will be jumping to the end of this. I turned the camera off and it went about like 15-20 minutes more. And I had meant to share all that, but I just got too into it and I didn't hit the camera on. So then poof, it was done. But I will be fixing the ear on the right. I'll be adding more black between the eyes. And the fur is going to look great. You'll see. And here is my black wolf. This would be a great addition to the story. And yeah, it's crazy. A few strokes towards the end, and I felt like, well, there he is. I'm done. And it's always surprising when that happens, but yeah, he turned out great. And as you can see, it was a good call to do that extra layer and really make this thing black. This way I wouldn't really have to go in and make more shadows. I was just kind of carving out the highlights and the light. And I think it was all a very effective addition to make this guy just kind of emerging out of the night, which was ultimately about the effect that I wanted. And yeah, I hope that this was somehow beneficial to you. I wonder what you think of this. I'd love to know. All right, you guys, we have ourselves a wolf. I've got my second piece for my new Little Red Riding Hood ghost story, which, by the way, you can check out on the Substack. It will be up by the time you see this, so I'll put a link in the description. and enjoy. I hope you like it. Let me know what you think either on Substack, or let me know what you think of this in the comments, and give me a like, notification bell if you feel so inclined. It was great having you guys. It's funny how you can always set out to do something, you have it in your mind, and it never works out the way you wanted it to. Many times it works out better, which is what I guess Bob Ross would call happy accidents. And I certainly love having those, and you should always put yourself in some position creatively where you get to find those as well. Very important. Well, anyways, make sure that you subscribe to the Substack. I've got a link for the emails if you'd like to know the future things that come along. I know with Ghost in the Gaslight, it's live stories that I stream on the Facebook. It's vlogs that I do on YouTube, or stories that premiere on Substack, as well as voiceover told stories that premiere there as well. And if you want a hub where you can stay up to date on all of that, the Inbox of Curiosities email list is the best way to do that. I'd love to have you on board, and I will see you on the next one. Take care, you beautiful haunted romantics.